Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar with Teacher Discovery. I'm very excited to be sharing an hour with you, sharing a little bit of my experience with you. So my name, for those that don't know me, my name is Adriana Ramirez. I am originally from Colombia and I live in Canada. I've been teaching for over 15 years. I teach Spanish in high school. From grade 9 is the very first time kids take Spanish here in Canada, and I take them to IB. So I teach beginners, intermediate, and advanced students. So my school is on a semester system. I'm going to tell you a little bit of background, like how much intensity my students have before they get to IB, and then how we do on IB. I want to share some things that I do, some of my experience, how I teach IB, and please, questions are welcome. Write them there. I'm going to stop every 10-15 minutes, read some questions and try to answer them. I want this to be very interactive, and I want to try to answer your questions. So I was telling you about the way my school is organized, the calendar. So we are in a semester system. So I see the kids a semester, which is like university. So it's technically 4 months from September to January. Every single day I see them, and the classes average, it changes every day, but it's like 60-65 minutes per class every day. And then I won't see them until the next year in one of the semesters, either first semester or second semester, and then I won't see them until the following year. So I get them in grade 9, brand new, zero Spanish, like zero Spanish, get them in grade 9, one first or second semester, doesn't matter. Then I get some of them in grade 10, first or second semester. Some of them have a year gap without Spanish, but when you teach with CI, it doesn't matter. And then I get the ones that choose to do IB, I get them again in September, and then IB is going to be a full year every day from September. Well, not a full year because IB exams are in March. No, yes, the oral is in March and the other exams are in May. So it's like I have them IB 11 one semester and IB 12 2 months. So at the end, I have them 4 semesters, not even 4 semesters before they take the IB exams and they graduate with their IB diploma. So that's like a background on my way of like getting the students and from zero to advanced. Okay, so you're here. The name of the webinar is The Benefits of CI in Advanced Language Classes. So when I give training and when I talk to people, one of the things that I always hear is that, yes, TPRS and CI methodologies are fantastic for beginners. The stories are great for beginners. But when you get to an advanced class, you do need to teach grammar. This is not what I think. This is what I always hear. The kids need grammar. If you don't teach them grammar, they won't do well in the exams. And this is the fear, because there is a perception that if you are advanced, you need more formal, explicit grammar teaching. So this is the fears that I hear from people. I want to tell you that I've been doing this for so many years, and I teach with CI methodologies, one of them being TPRS, movie talk, picture talk. I'm just giving them comprehensible, communicative, embedded input. That's what I do every single minute of my class. From day 1 in grade 9 to the last day in IB. And I never, ever do explicit grammar instruction. Never, ever. And before I use CI, so many years ago, before I embraced the CI methodologies frame of mind, I taught with explicit grammar instruction. I taught them the subjunctive, like the conjugation, the rule, all of the things that we do when we do explicit grammar. And my kids now are way better. My kids now can read, and can write naturally without thinking about grammar. So I have some notes here. I'm going to try to follow them so my ideas are organized. So what are the benefits? What are some benefits that I can see when you keep teaching through CI methodologies in the higher advanced levels? They keep enjoying and loving what they do, which is, it's fundamental for me. I want to do lifelong learners. I want my kids to really fall in love with their Spanish. I want them to graduate with their IB diploma. Really, like, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter to me. I want Spanish to be part of their life forever. I want them to go to university and keep taking Spanish. I want them to travel. I want Spanish to be part of who they are. So I cannot take the joy out of my class. That's an impossible. So I want them to keep enjoying and loving the class. Because they're advanced doesn't mean they don't get bored. They still get bored. So it's my job not to let that happen. But if I switch to grammar, they will. So I have to keep them engaged. I have to keep them motivated. They have to, this has to be their favorite class. This is the class where we have human interactions, where we discuss, where we learn about life. Okay, so an analogy that I like sharing with people is that when you teach the language, grammar is embedded in the language. Grammar is there. It's not that we're not teaching grammar. Every word that comes out of our mouths, everything that we say, it's embedded. The grammar is there. So we are teaching grammar. We're just not doing it explicitly, which is the difference. Now, when we teach it there, we'll teach them to see the forest. We teach them to see the forest as a whole. We teach them to enjoy the forest, appreciate the forest, be able to move through the forest. When we do explicit grammar, we are nitpicking about learning the name of every tree in the forest and learning the branches and the leaves and the cycles of this tree and that tree. I don't care about that. I just want them to be able to see the forest, get happy with the forest and embrace the forest. That's what I want. I don't care about the single tree knowledge, which is what we do with the explicit grammar teaching. Sometimes I hear a lot from teachers that, oh, my kids enjoy the grammar. And I was listening to Talking YouTube with BVP last Wednesday. It was season 2, episode 5. If you want to go, and you can always go back and listen to it. Season 2, episode 5. From minute 18 until like minute 30, he gives a really good explanation about, it's all about implicit learning. So if I took notes here, but please go and listen to it. So when people say like, oh, my kids enjoy it. I teach some grammar in the advanced levels and my kids enjoy it. Some people say this to me. And I can say 2 things. First, when they say enjoy it, what I would say is that when you explain the grammar and you give a practice worksheet or a practice exercise, finishing it gives you like a satisfaction for accomplishment. So I believe that is what they enjoy. They finished an exercise, but we have to be aware that that doesn't translate into language acquisition, which is at the end what we want. And this is what I always thought. But then BVP said last Wednesday, please go and listen to this program. It was really good. He says, it is when you learn something, and I'm paraphrasing the notes that I took from his show. It is when you learn something without awareness that this becomes implicit knowledge. And we want language to become implicit knowledge. Language cannot be learned about. Language has to be acquired. And I always tell my kids, when you're talking, when you're writing, let it come from your heart. You learn language from your heart, not from your brain, period. I don't want you to think about it. I just want you to feel it. That's it. But if I start doing the explicit teaching, I switch their brains to think about language, which is something that I don't want. I want them to feel it. I want just them to talk, to say things. Mistakes, yes, they will happen. I know mistakes come out of my mouth when I speak English. I don't care. Everyone can understand what I'm saying, and that's totally fine. And that's the joy that I want my kids to be able to get from the class. Just talk. I'm not worried about perfection. Just write. I'm not worried about perfection. I want you to enjoy the language and communicate. So if I want that feeling that comes from your heart, not your brain, I have to give the food that feeds that feeling, which is comprehensible input in my class. I cannot switch to explicit grammar instruction, because then I block them and they start thinking about it, and I don't want them to think about it. I want them to feel the language. So that is one of the things that I really, really loved from BVP. And as a native Spanish speaker, and we're all native speakers of our mother tongue, we like grammar. I'm trying to think back with my school years. Like grammar came in high school, but high school is like how many years after you've had schooling? 10 years? I don't know, so many years when grammar came. But I don't remember, but I'm too old now, so I might have forgotten. I don't remember like teachers explaining us the subjunctive. Never. But we just use it. We feel it. We know how to use it. We know when to use it. I don't remember teachers giving us worksheets to practice the grammar. When we talked about grammar, it was more in Spanish class when we were working on writing better, like better writers, writing essays, writing articles in Spanish. So we were working on transition words, expressing how you say this better, more elegant, prettier, those kind of things. But we never had the grammar classes that our kids have in the traditional language classes. So why are we doing that to them? And one example that I always tell everyone is about my husband. My husband and I were both from Colombia, native Spanish speakers. And some years ago, when I started like switching my brain into a CI mode, I asked him, do you know that we have two past tenses in Spanish? And like we had all our schooling in Colombia, Spanish, university in Colombia. So like we are Spanish. So I asked him, do you know we have two past tenses in Spanish? And he was like, we do? And I was, yes, and you use them all the time without knowing. And he was like, really? What are the two past tenses? So I gave him an example, iba and fue. And he was like, oh, iba, you use it for this, and fue, you use it for that. And he was so shocked. And he had been using it naturally without knowing for years. So that's what I want with my students. I want them that feeling, that natural use. Okay, so those are the benefits. I'm gonna read some of the comments. I have some likes and some hearts. Oh, thank you. Love the forest analogy. I love it too. I think it helps me showing people how we need them to see the forest, not the trees. Okay, grades, and yes, please, someone is saying check out Talking L2. It's just fantastic. I love BVP. So how about grades? I want to talk specifically about advanced classes and IB, which is what I teach. So the IB exams, and I'm pretty sure AP is like that because I've talked to a lot of AP teachers as well. The IB exams are not grammar focused, which is fantastic. It's like, you know language or you don't know. The more Spanish you know, the better you'll do in the exam, period, which is like beautiful. You need to know how to talk, you need to know how to write, and you need to know how to read and listen. That's it. So the more Spanish, the better. I don't care, or they don't care, which is lovely. If they know the grammar, the name, the rule, the conjugation, not just can you use it. And of course, the more sophisticated your Spanish, well, the more chances you will get a higher grade. But how do you get sophisticated otherwise if it's not with comprehensible input? So we have 4 sections in the exam. We have the oral, we have the writing part, the reading, and the listening. So the oral, it's so simple. Well, simple if your students have gone through CI. If they haven't, it's just the most stressful thing ever. My students can do their IB oral. It's just a joke for them. You give them 2 pictures. They choose one, the one that they feel more comfortable with. You put the other one away. They take that one, and they have some minutes to prepare in their heads what they're going to talk about, and then they just talk about it for 15 minutes, but they talk like 5 minutes by themselves, just describing the picture, what's going on, and then the rest of the time is me with them asking questions, and they answer the question and they elaborate. So for them, it's just having a conversation with their teacher about a picture, because we're always having conversations and everything is always within this communicative approach, and everything is like trying to make sense and meaning of things. For them, it's like we're chatting, which is what we do every single day in class. So it's just easy. Writing, we write a lot. We write essays, we write blogs, we write articles. Writing is part of the IB requirement. So I do have to teach those writing skills, which are different from Spanish. The writing skills is like how to write a blog, how to write a brochure. Like they have specific little things, but of course I teach that in the Spanish. And because the more you read, the better you write, and we have free voluntary reading. My IB kids have to read 20 novels of the readers that we all have in our classes. I don't care what they read. They can read the easy level ones. It's up to them. It's free voluntary reading. A lot of them start with the easy ones, which is okay, and then they move up. Naturally, they feel successful and they start getting harder and harder books. And so for them, writing, they have beautiful vocab. They have no problem. The more you read, the better you write. The more you read, the better you read. So the reading comprehension, they know they won't understand every single word in the text that they get in the exam, but they have enough skills to decode the new stuff. And listening, well, they listen to me speak in Spanish the whole class. So for them, listening is not a big deal. So we are CI teachers, we're preparing our kids super well, very, very, very well prepared for these exams. So for grades, for my IB kids, we do debates in class. I talk about, for example, right now we're learning about the Day of the Dead, and sorry, after having a discussion, I will ask some questions and I will mark that for participation, like were you able to answer or not. They will have to write, like let's write, we will watch Coco, so we will write something about Coco, a diary entry, a review, something about it. So grades is about celebrating what they know. So I am not like to catch them like, oh, you don't know this, or you still, no, I'm going to celebrate. And I gave them feedback on the things that they need to improve, not the Spanish, like the logic. Your first paragraph needs to have a clear purpose. You need to develop your idea. I give them feedback on the logic, on the message. The Spanish, the feedback is for me, because whatever they are lacking is what I have to keep throwing more in class until they get it. That's it. So I grade the writing, because we do writings in class. I grade the talking when we have debates, and listening like that. It's pretty chill. It's pretty chill. Anyways, at the end, IB does the testing and is marked outside externally. So whatever they get, but they always get beautiful marks. So that's about my grading for higher classes. I'm reading here more questions. When our students complain they don't know what the grammar names are in English, yet they speak English without knowing them. Yes, which is what I want in a Spanish. I work in an IB school from kinder to 12th grade. I'm reading the questions, by the way. Can you give me more examples for IB school diploma? I am new to the DP. Thanks. I'm sorry. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm gonna be coughing here a little bit. I'm blowing my nose. Where's my Kleenex here? Okay, so examples for IB school diploma. I don't know what you mean. Like, okay, so I'm gonna talk, one of the points that I had here, it's talking a little bit about IB and the curriculum, which I know it's very similar with to the AP curriculum. So we have, it's beautiful. Actually, the DP curriculum, I like it. We have 5 topics that are very general. We have culture, we have social organizations, which it's general. Sharing the planet, we have identities and experiences. So as you can see, the names are so general, and within those names, I can teach whatever I want that goes with that name, with that theme, and that is related to the Spanish culture, which is the language that I teach. So for example, for experiences, which is culture, I teach the Day of the Dead, and I teach novels. I love teaching with novels, especially in IB. I teach about coffee, my coffee novel. I don't know if you are aware, I wrote this novel, and I do it with my IB students. And I'm drinking coffee right now. So the experiences, all the culture from different places, very, very important. Social organizations, I talk about family, different types of family, different ways of living, sharing the planet, lots of things to talk about it, being like a responsible consumer, being like all of those things. So it's very general, and I try to tackle it within the most important things in our Spanish culture. For example, right now, Spain is a leader in the slow fashion, which is a movement that is trying to fight fast fashion that is ruining our planet. So I have a huge unit on slow fashion. All the things like that are the curriculum, and I start covering it with picture talk, with movie talks, with reading, with discussions, and that's like, it's just like a Spanish, that the frame of mind that you have to have is that Spanish, or whatever language you teach, is the bridge for you to communicate the message. So I honestly do not care about the Spanish. The only thing that I care about is that the Spanish that is coming out of my mouth and out of the PowerPoints and the readings, it's comprehensible, not that it has all this grammar, these verbs, these conjugations. No, what comes out of my mouth has to be comprehensible to them, so I can convey the message, which is learning, for example, about slow fashion. So the Spanish is the bridge. So both myself and they forget that they're learning Spanish. We're learning about slow fashion in Spanish. And that's how the brain starts absorbing all that input naturally and implicitly, and the Spanish starts blossoming. Okay, so I'm gonna keep reading some questions. How do you teach reading? People were asking earlier today about alternatives to translation. I prepare PowerPoints with the topic, like, so paragraphs or sentences. For example, now we're doing the Day of the Dead, so I have some little paragraphs like what he said, what are the main things that are around it, what are the symbolisms for the altars and the offerings. So like that, we start reading. I know what are the words that should be new to them, so I ask them, okay, who knows this? And we just translate the word. So this means that, okay, and then we keep talking and talking. So those little PowerPoints that I prepare with the paragraphs and the discussion that happens in class are going to be embedded later in a reading. So first I have the PowerPoint with little paragraphs. It's not, don't make it big because it's boring, just little paragraphs, but I throw there all the new words that I know I'm going to be using, and I know they need them later in case they want to write about it or talk about it naturally. Then I'm going to recycle those expressions, those words, in movie talks that I do. The movie talks now at this level are not necessarily of an animated video. I movie talk a news report. I movie talk, like I get a news report about parade of the Day of the Death, and I stop it, and even the guy is talking in the background, but I stop it. Did you listen? Did you catch what he said? Let's rewind, try to listen and stop. What do you see? Do you see the parade? Do you see the altars? Do you see the symbols that we're learning about? Do you see fire, air? These are all the things that are related to Day of the Death and the altar. So I recycle everything that I introduced in the PowerPoint in the movie talk naturally. Of course, they don't know I'm doing that. I know I am doing that. So I am repeating. The circling here in advanced levels doesn't happen one sentence and you circle one sentence until they get it. It doesn't happen like that. You circle over time, and over time means over time of what the unit takes place. So for example, the unit of the Day of the Death might take 2 to 3 weeks. My goal is that at the end of those 3 weeks, they are experts on the Day of the Death. They can talk about it, write about it, listen and understand about it. So the circling will take 3 weeks. I'm not gonna worry right now about circling. There is a new word, for example, fire. I'm just making this up. Fire is new, fuego. I'm not gonna circle this fuego, no. But I know that it will be there every single day for 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, they're gonna know what the word means. So the circling is the spread in time for the advanced levels. It's not like one sentence at a time. So at the end, they know that. So I start with the picture, the PowerPoint, which could be a kind of like a picture talk. Then the movie talk, and this could be different ones. Then the reading, but I scaffold the reading, so I know these words are going to be in the reading. So then we read together. And I try the new stuff. I always read with them the first time, especially at the beginning. Later on, I give them articles and try to read it and see how you feel. But at the beginning in IB, grade 11, right now, I always read with them. I'm walking with them. I'm taking them to the next level. We are hiking up a mountain. The mountain is very steep. I have to walk with my babies, and I have to give them the skills to like really get up there. So I read with them. I already scaffolded all the hard new keywords, like the keywords that are going to be in the reading. And then all the new stuff, when we're reading, we're not translating at this point every sentence. We already moved away from that already. They know a lot, but I know what could be the new things, and they also know, they just say, I don't understand this. What does it say? What is this? So, and we try to figure it out, because I want them to try to figure it out by context. I want them to learn first that. So what do you think? What do you think it is? Let's try it. What can it be? So we make some guesses. Most of the times they guess right, which is a skill that I also want them to develop, figuring out by context. Is a skill that I need them to develop, because in the exam, in the reading, in the real IB exam, they won't know all the words. I know they won't, but don't get stuck in a word that you don't know. Move on and try to figure out that word by context. So, and then we translate, and if I need to say it in English, I just say it in English. But that's my, not that I'm against it, I do it all the time, but I try to give them a synonym first. I try to explain the word. If I need to move, I move. I try to give them options, or it is also like this, or you can replace it like this. And eventually, if it's a harder one, I just say it in English, and then that's it. So in the higher levels, translation still happens, but not every sentence is just for those expressions or those words that are new. Okay, so I'm going to read some more comments. I'm drinking here my Colombian coffee. What activities do you use when reading authentic sources in class? So to me, everything that I have a problem with the word authentic, because everything, these readers are authentic. When I give brown bear, what do you see to a little one? That is authentic. That is authentic. It's written at the level of the student. I cannot give a grade 1 Shakespeare. I have to scaffold throughout all the years of schooling until they can get to read Shakespeare. I cannot give a grade 9 Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I have to scaffold with these beautiful readers that we all have and know until they can read Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So it's the same. All the readers that are written for language learners are as authentic as it gets. It's authentic for their level of Spanish or French or German or whatever the language is. So everything is authentic. Now, I think you mean, what do you use when reading harder or more challenging readings? Then, because they read a lot first, free voluntary reading is key. We read novels together as a class, harder novels, more advanced novels, which is like the ones that I have written. And I have a scaffolded, so when we finish the Day of the Death towards the last week of, I take 3 weeks doing that unit. Towards the last week, I give them harder readings, meaning like I took them from the internet or a blog, readings that are more complicated, more advanced. I have scaffolded all the key vocab, all the key expressions, so they can read that and feel successful. And that's what I do. So it's always when I'm doing like slow fashion, I have a unit on slow fashion. I start scaffolding it since my first PowerPoint. I write my little paragraphs with the keywords that I start introducing naturally within the questions and the discussion, PQ, the movie talk of the videos that I need to talk. So at the end, I always throw them those harder, more challenging readings, but they feel successful because they know all the key vocab to understand what they're talking about. So that's how I do it. And the words that they don't know, well, now they have the ability to figure them out. How do you include, I want to read more questions, but I want to have some coffee first. How do you include heritage learners in your classes, in your CI classes? Okay, so I have, if you really, really want to learn about heritage learners, I recommend that you see what Mike Pito has developed and said and written about them. He's done amazing things for heritage learners. I do get we don't have a lot here in Canada, but we do get, when they are doing IB, we might get 1 or 2 that do IB, although they can do IB there because their schooling was in English. So even though they can speak some like Spanish, the writing still needs a lot of work. So we get those. But in a normal CI class, I offer them an alternative program that I have developed with lots of reading and novels and other activities. So they usually have this alternative program that they work on based on reading. And sometimes when I need or when they feel like it, they join and are part of the class. So that's what I do with them. How do you have time to read all that writing? They write once a week, and in class, like the task. So when they are writing, I'm reading what they were writing. And sometimes I can't, during that time, I have time to go over most of the class, and then the other ones I just finished after school. But I try, for my own mental health, I try to keep it under control. So they write once a week, and while they are writing, I am reading the writing from the previous week, and it kind of works. Of course, sometimes I have to put extra more time, but that's okay. Okay, I'm going to read more questions. How do you correct overgeneralizations? For example, when students are using fue for everything, do you just continue to do more CI, or do you point out the mistake? How do you do it? How do you deal with internalized mistakes? Okay, so I'm talking about the advanced classes here to answer this question. So when I am marking the writing, I take notes on my own pad. I take notes of all those general, I hate the word mistake, it's because they don't exist, but of I take notes of the things that they have not acquired yet. And it's like a general thing for everyone. So I take my notes there. I don't write it on the paper because whatever I write and correct on the paper, it won't translate into them acquiring it. I just take notes for myself of the general things, the general patterns that I see. Oh, everyone's still doing this, or they need more input with that. Sometimes when it's something like, for example, my kids are using subjunctive now, and they get the logic of the subjunctive. That is something in the future that you don't have any possibility like of knowing if it's going to happen or not. It's like a hope, it's a wish. So some of them, and it always happens, every time they write if in Spanish, sí, they get like, oh, this is a possibility. So they say sí, and then they use subjunctive. They know they have used sí since grade 9. Sí vienes, sí comes. But then when they understand the logic of subjunctive, because I tell them, okay, chicos, there is a verb tense in Spanish. Of course, I say this in Spanish, that is called subjunctive. I only say the name, that's it. That it means like hopes and wishes for the future. We believe, I mean, it's part of the language, the culture, that the future is up to, not to us, could be to God, to the universe, whatever beliefs you have, but it's not up to us. So we just wish and hope for that to happen. So that's only grammar explanation that I give them. It's just like the logic of the verb. I do not conjugate, I do not give them rules. I just explain. For example, when you say, I wish that you have a good weekend, que tengas un buen fin de semana, is my wish for you. But at the end of the day, it's not up to me, it's not up to you, it's up to like all the forces of the universe. So that's kind of the only explanation that I give. So they kind of get it. And then they start using sí with subjunctive. And it always happens. Like it's because they get the logic. So then I go back to the class and I explain everything in Spanish. And I just say sí if won't activate subjunctive. Every time you're going to use sí, don't use subjunctive because it doesn't activate it. You don't need it. That's it. That's what I do. So that's what I do with those overgeneralizations. I don't think it's an internalized mistake. They're just playing with the language, and their brains are still making the connections that they need to make to acquire that. So I just give them feedback on that, like don't use it in Spanish. Okay, so I'm gonna keep reading questions. These questions are so good. How do you transition from stories to other text types? Okay, so the first, I love this question. For IB, so I see them a full year. So the first month, I still do my TPRS stories with all the advanced structures. I do all the subjunctive, all the future, all of those advanced structures. I use them in my stories. It's my way of warming up, is my way of reviewing, because I get kids that were not with me, that come from other schools, and their level, because they didn't acquire language with CI, their level is very different. So it's my way of trying to level them up a little bit, being like 150% comprehensible with the stories. So I just we start reading stories. We're reading a lot of stories, and then I always transition, because I planned it like that, from the stories to Day of the Death, which is kind of like a story, and then it moves. I just change it, and stories, and then now we're gonna read this and that, and a later, and it just changes like naturally. The Day of the Death helps me because it's like a story, but nothing, like you don't have to do anything special, or at least I don't think you have to do anything special. I'm going to keep reading questions. I teach Spanish 4-5, and while my kids can explain their ideas well, their ability to be accurate and control various tenses is all over the place. I don't teach explicit grammar, but I don't know what I should be doing differently so they can wave through various tenses more naturally. Do you have any suggestions? Read like crazy. Read at home, free voluntary reading. The class, probably you already do it 100% comprehensible. Novels, teach with novels, and then that's it. And then there is something, and BBP says this all the time, there is something in every learner's brain that you cannot control. Some of them will just get those verb tenses and start using them easily and fast. Some of them will take more time. So these kids that are not moving fluently between tenses, that's okay. They just need more time. They just need more input, and that's their brain, and that's okay. As long as you keep feeding their brains, their linguistic brains, then that's fine. It's okay. As long, what matters is like, can they communicate a message? Can you understand them? And can you have a conversation with them? Doesn't matter if they're not using the right tense. It really doesn't matter, because each one is in a different learning path, and you cannot compare one to the other one. So I would say just keep doing what you're doing, give them time, make sure you feed them with the right food for language acquisition, and then that's it. What's the slow fashion and fast fashion? Oh, okay. So for IB, with global issues and sharing the planet, we talk about what are the things that are destroying our planet, and what can we do to help our planet be a better place, be more ecological, more green. So fast fashion is the fashion that it has you buying clothes, cheap on sale clothes, but are not good quality. So we're constantly buying and buying and buying, and there are like Black Friday sales, like Christmas sales, sales here, sales there, buy 3 for the price of 1, but you buy very cheap, and that has a big cost for the planet. Water, labor, it's huge. So there is a big new idea movement in Spain. Is one of the leaders, slow fashion, trying to compensate that. So I have a unit on that, because Spain is huge in slow fashion, and because I teach Spanish, it goes directly with our culture and the language. How do you find pictures and videos for pictures and movie talk? If I Day of the Death, Google Images, Day of the Death, and then I start like going through the things that I think I like and will be useful. Slow fashion or fast fashion, Google Images. Google Images is like my thing, and I just type the topic thing that I need, and I just get them from there. Again, like I said before, for advanced classes, movie talks, I still do the videos when I find one, but I need to do movie talks, not movie talks, let's change the name, video talks of other things, like mini documentaries. I video talk that. News reports, I video talk that. And I actually want them at this point to listen to what the video is saying. And then I just, what do you hear? And I rewind it. Let's listen to it again. What do you hear? And then I have a discussion there. Do you hear this? What did he say? He was talking about this. He was talking about that. So it's pausing the video. I want them to not just listen to my accent and my Spanish. I want them to listen to an Argentinian Spanish and Spanish. Like, that's why I want them to listen to that, and faster speakers. Okay. Another question. I have very quiet students. It's hard for me to make them talk. They are very knowledgeable in the language, but I struggle to get them talking. Any suggestions or examples of activities? Oh yes, I've had, sometimes you get those classes that are quieter, and sometimes you get louder classes, and definitely louder classes are better because they keep the energy alive and the discussions are richer. Well, this is advanced classes at this point. Like I'm like, we need the discussions, we need the debates. It's not just me talking. At this point, they have not enough Spanish to talk back to me and to answer to my questions and to generate discussions. So first I talked to them and I said, well, it's not a one-side conversation. We need to talk here. I try to make it personal. I try to make this topic personal. So for example, Day of the Death, this class that I have this year, it's like they talk and talk, which I love. Last year was super quiet. So what I did to have them talking is that, okay, so Day of the Death, this is for Mexico, my Chinese students. How do you celebrate? I want to know, how do you celebrate the death in your culture? Is there a way to celebrate, remember, honor the death? I want to know. Okay, can you please tell us? So I would try to make it personal but kind of like make them talk a little bit. But they are, I know, like you said, they're very knowledgeable, and I know they can talk. They just tend to be quiet. And usually Asian students, in my case, culturally, they tend to be quieter. They tend to just pay attention to the teacher and don't talk. So when I make it personal and I want to learn about your culture, how do you in China celebrate the dead? They want to talk. They usually want to talk. So I bring the conversation alive with that. Okay, I want to keep reading this. How do you keep a student's engagement throughout longer stories? I don't know. We have a lot of fun, so it works. Yes, okay, so Karen Rowan here is like giving some of the names of my books. So for my IB classes, I wrote these ones specifically for IB or AP, El Camino del Café. I read it just right before the end of the course, perfect for the exams, for the writing, lots of culture, lots of subjunctive, lots of advanced levels. I write also this one in first person because I find for this level, it's a lot of third person, all the articles, all the blogs and everything. So I needed more like an advanced first person book. So I wrote this one. It's good for experiences and culture. I also wrote this one, and I also wrote this one. So we always do these novels as a class. Very cultural, so they're learning tons of culture. So when they have to talk or write or read, they are super ready with the culture and advanced vocab. Okay, so we have 13 minutes. That's not a lot of time. So another point that I wanted to touch here that I have here, if you have more questions, please write them, and I will try to answer the last couple minutes. So how do you deal with different level of students? What do you do? Because I do get different levels of the students. And how do you make or help them work their way up? So one thing, there are two different levels of students that I can classify. One is the ones that, like VVP says, there is an internal mechanism in our language brains that we have no control of. So those that have been with me in grade 9 and 10 and still need more time, that's like different levels. The ones that you breathe and they learn, and the ones that you need to repeat, that's normal. So that's one, but I know I have given them the ingredients for their brains to do the cooking, the slow cooking. So I'm not worried about those at all. I know it will come out when their brains have cooked language, so I'm not worried about those. Now, in my IB class, I get students from other schools that never learned Spanish through CI. Those I am always worried about because they know grammar, they know conjugation, but they cannot talk, they cannot read, they cannot write, literally. So they come and they see my students and they're like, we're chatting in Spanish, my classes are 100% in Spanish. My students are writing, I tell them, okay, let's write a story or let's write this. And all these other kids are like, what is happening here? So I talk to them, I always talk to them. So I tell them, okay, so this is a whole different experience. You're going to feel uncomfortable at the beginning. You're going to feel frustrated. I need you to deal with frustration a little bit. I'm not going to ask you questions. I'm going to leave you alone, in the sense I'm going to respect your adapting time, your cooking time. I'm going to respect your brain's time to figure out what's going on in my class. I'm looking at them all the time. I need to know you're paying attention to me, and you have to be looking at me all the time. Now, my first month that I do TPRS and the stories, I do it on purpose, and I go slow, even though it's advanced, and I have my past tense, and I point at the words and the questions, and I go back to the pointing at all the posters that I have in my class, and I do just for these kids. lots of reading. I ask them, you have to read this story. We're reading this story in class. You have to read them at home 2 or 3 times. These kids, I can count on, they will do this because they chose to be in IB and they need to learn Spanish. So I know they will do it. When you choose a book from free voluntary reading, please read it 2 or 3 times, because like BBP says, he said it in an episode from last year, I believe, and this was beautiful. When he said this, I was like, yes, it makes sense. So the first time you read something, anything, your brain is trying to make sense of the story behind, trying to make sense of the message behind. That's natural. Your brain does that. You're trying to read this, your brain is paying attention to the story or the message that is trying to tell you. The second time that you read it, when you reread, then your brain naturally starts paying attention to all those aspects of the language. So that's why in my class we read and reread. And those kids that come from other schools with very, very low level of Spanish, I ask them to read and reread and reread. And I tell them, like, you do this part, I promise you will go ahead. Like, I will promise you will learn. It's impossible not to learn. I have been very lucky. I get kids that they understand their frustration. I am always checking on them, but they understand that they trust me. They do the reading, rereading, and rereading. I do my stories for them. I give them time. And these kids that at the beginning were like so low, they get 5, 6, and 7s in their IB exams. So it is possible, and you can help them catch up. They have to do way more extra work than the other ones, but the way more extra work is just reading more. That's it. Read more. So this kid reads a book 1 time because they just might, like a kid that was with me in grade 9 and 10, they just read a book for pleasure. They close it, good. They don't need to read. I mean, they always would benefit from rereading, but they can just read. These kids have to read, reread, and reread. And if they do that, you will see that it moves up. I also recommend that they watch on their own at home series on Netflix that are like in Spanish with the Spanish subtitles. At the beginning, you understand nothing, but then you start getting up in the understanding, just to get used to the language. We sing like crazy in class, like singing. I always start my classes with a song. Singing is crazy, singing is huge. They learn lots from singing, expressions, words, vocab. And the thing is that I make them fall in love with my music. So without me saying, because the songs that I choose are contemporary, are the songs that we actually are listening on the radio, Spanish people, they fall in love so much that they start, without me saying, listening to Spanish music at home. So their parents tell me, oh, that like we're driving, we're going somewhere, we can always listen. We can only listen to Spanish music because they don't let us put in the car any other music, or they're always doing their homework with the Spanish music. So I'm like putting the input there with them at home. They're listening, and they come and tell me, oh, I heard this new song from Shakira or J Balvin. So they are looking for more input by themselves. When you give them the tools, they will do it. Okay, so I'm going to read some more questions here. I need resources for my students that don't speak Spanish, and I am teaching them Spanish. Well, there are a lot of resources. If you're teaching with CI, I have published a full curriculum to teach with the stories. You can find it on my website, adrianaramirez.ca, and then you'll find it there, or you can go on Amazon. And there's another question. Los puedo poner, can I have them reading? But it would have to be directed only for read and not comprehension. But now we're talking about beginners here. Yes, I mean, like I would do a different thing for beginners. And I was like just sharing my experience with advanced students. So before we have 6 minutes. So from BVP, I took notes from last Wednesday. Again, please go and listen to last Wednesday's class, read his book. He's going to publish another book. Eric Herman published another book about research that BVP is really happy about. I will buy it for sure. So from last Wednesday, he said, and I want to finish with this. So for language teachers, so the title of his talk was, it's all about implicit learning. It's all about implicit learning. So for language teachers, there are two takeaways, and this is from what he said. When it comes to acquisition and to communicate, learners do the bulk of the work implicitly. They don't do it explicitly, no matter what you do. This is very important. No matter how much grammar you teach explicitly, no matter how many worksheets they fill out, when it's time to communicate, they will use their implicit knowledge. And the explicit knowledge in language does not translate into explicit knowledge. And then he says, number 2, explicit learning and practice do very little to affect that implicit system. And after I listened to that, I had my own reflection about it, and I wrote this, and this is like my analogy to understand what he's saying. I love exercising. I go to the gym, I run, everything. So what he's saying is like, there is a part in the brain for languages. We are a different kind of people. We language teachers, we're not math teachers, we're not science teachers, we're not social teachers, we're language teachers. They try to put us in the same box as the other kind of subjects, but we're not. We're different. So when people say, but you're on the spot all the time, yes, like I am the one who's giving them the comprehensible input. Who else is gonna do it? So it's me, but it's us, so we're different. So I'm related to grammar and implicit knowledge and CI, that it's the way to go. Of course, it's the only way our head acquires languages. It's like, I want to get muscles. I want to get really muscled up. And so I see, from the explicit grammar point of view, I'm just gonna go on YouTube and watch videos about how to build muscles. I'm gonna go and read how fibers in the muscles work. I'm gonna see the bicep curls and all the exercises that you have to do to build muscles, and I will watch and watch and watch videos. I will probably read some about it, but that won't translate into me building up muscle. The only way that will help me building up muscle is going to the gym and working my muscle. So the explicit knowledge of getting like muscle fiber and building up won't translate into me actually getting the muscles that I want. So it's the same with languages. The explicit grammar knowledge that you give them won't translate into them learning, acquiring, and speaking the language. The only way is them being embedded in a communicative situation with you, with the teacher. It could be reading or you talking to them. So this is my last analogy for you to take with you. They don't need explicit grammar in advanced levels. They don't need it. It won't translate into better scores in their exams. It won't translate into better language or more acquisition. What they need is more language, more novels. Do the reading, read with them, and like make them feel the culture, engage them in topics that they are very passionate about it. We've had these beautiful conversations in the class, and they forget we're doing it in Spanish. They just 100% forget about it, because that's what you want to do. That you want to immerse them in the language. I think that's it. I think I have a minute left. I'm just gonna go How do you present songs, YouTube videos, lyric videos? Okay, I don't have a time to answer that one. Thank you. What is BVP? BVP, Bill Van Patten, BVP. Okay, so that's it. So there's just one question that I think I couldn't answer because it would take me like 30 more minutes to do it. Okay, so that's it for now and for today. Thank you for sharing this hour with me. I hope I was able to give you some tips, some ideas, some insights that I have found, learned, built throughout my years of teaching advanced to students. And thank you for your time. And I have great advanced novels. If you want to see them, you can find them on Amazon. Thank you. Bye.